Welcome back to another episode of the Draw Control podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by grad student on the East Carolina women's lacrosse team, Frances Kimel. In her lacrosse career, Frances was a first-team All-AAC honoree and IWLCA All-Region honoree, named to the AAC All-Academic Team, and broke a program record with 71 points and 42 goals last season. Before college, Frances was both the state championship MVP and team MVP. She also earned the NCHSSAA Sportsmanship Award, as well as being named Cap 7 All-Conference and HSOT All-East team after her senior season. Welcome to the podcast, Caroline. I'm really excited to have you on today. And how's everything going?
Yeah, it's going good. It's going good. We're getting to the deep of season right now. So as we start to get going, things get busy, but it's been good so far for sure.
Now, obviously, your team is currently 3-5 at the time of this recording. What's your thoughts on the season so far from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've played a lot of great games. I think the good thing about that is I don't think we've played our best lacrosse yet. So as we start to transition towards conference games and kind of those ACC midweek games that we have scheduled, knowing that we haven't kind of hit our peak yet, I think is a good thing. And I think we're doing a really good job in practice these last couple of weeks, continuing to elevate our game and kind of figure out what we're going to use in games and what we're not. So as kind of we've started to shift that momentum in our season towards conference play, we haven't played our best lacrosse yet, but I think you can look at it as a good thing and knowing that our best lacrosse is definitely coming.
Yeah, and a lot of teams use their non-conference games at the beginning of the season as sort of measuring stick games to see where they are. What did you take away from some of your non-conference games? Because I feel like there was a lot of positives to take away, but then there's also
Yeah.
some things that you think your team might need to work on as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's what's good about those non-conference games. I mean, the way that we schedule is our non-conference games are big time ACC teams, which I think is really beneficial to us in our conference at the end of the day. I think when we go to the big takeaways is knowing that we can compete with anyone in the country. We just have to show up. And I think given the season, anyone's beatable on any type of day. So I think for us, it's just knowing we have to show up to be competitive and to win games. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. And we know that we can do that. And I think that starts kind of every day at practice.
Now, the big storyline with your team heading into this season was there was a coaching change as Coach Amanda Moore took the Ohio State job and Brittany Dipper was hired this past summer. What's it been like being coached by Coach Brittany Dipper? And has it been an adjustment for you learning different types of systems? And has the transition been somewhat smooth for you? I'm just curious what it's like, especially as a fifth-year player, because it's usually
Yeah.
not every day you get a new coach in your final year of college lacrosse.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think there's definitely always a transition period when you have new coaches. But I think our team has done an amazing job looking at it as such an exciting and new start for our program and getting to learn from someone new and someone exciting every single day. So I think there always is adjustments and changes, but I think we have a big group of fifth years and seniors who have been here for 4 to 5 years, who I think have really helped our team transition really nicely into a new coaching staff. And I think Coach Dipper and Coach Grace, Coach Kaylin, they've all done an amazing job with us and helping us transition to get used to their style of coaching more so. But I think that it's been amazing having new coaches, and I'm really fortunate that I get to learn from someone as great as Coach Dipper and Grace and Kaylin, and really try to kind of elevate my game for the last time this year.
Now, like you mentioned, you are a fifth-year player this year. So what type of leadership have you tried to bring to the team? Would you consider yourself more of a vocal leader or lead by example type of player?
I'm definitely more on the vocal side. I think when you play a position like a crease attacker, when you're at X, you're inherently kind of in that quarterback role. And as I've kind of been in that role on my team since my sophomore year, I think that you inherently have to be on the more vocal side. So I think I definitely find myself being more communicative also, but leading by example when it is appropriate. But I definitely am on the more vocal side of leadership, I would say.
Now, like we sort of talked about this before, but I'm curious, what's the biggest thing you and your team have been trying to work on the most as you guys head into conference play next week?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of things you got to work on from a scheme, from like offense to defensive draws in between the 30s. I think a big thing our focus has been is just like putting the pieces together and connecting like really good sets of defense. So making stops or saves to transition in between the 30s and ending up in a goal or having it turn into a draw and then to a goal. I think we've shown really great glimpses at times of doing that. I think it's now about for us just like putting those little pieces together and continuing to kind of build momentum as games go instead of like having momentum and then losing it and then getting it back. I think whereas like we start to put those little pieces together, I think we're going to find a ton of success.
Yeah. And one question I want to ask you about the
Yeah.
30s and sort of that transition game was one thing I noticed during fall ball was there was a lot more yellow cards being called in that transition game in 30-yard area. I'm curious how you sort of adjusted to the new rules for this season and how's that been like for you this during the regular season? Because I know it's been a little
Yeah.
bit, they haven't called it as much as fall ball, which I sort of
Yeah.
expected.
Yeah. I think, yeah, there's definitely an adjustment that you have to make. I think our coaches do a really good job in practice when we take time talking about the ride and how they expect their attackers and midfielders to defend in between the 30s and talking about like how to make safe body contact and how to safely throw checks without it being like a big tomahawk to the ground, which will get you a yellow. So I think our coaches have done a really good job emphasizing how to ride carefully without fouling or getting green cards or getting yellow cards. It's definitely an adjustment on the field because I think when you're in the heat of the moment of the game, all you want to do is cause a turnover for your team. I think a big emphasis for us in between the 30s is maybe if you're not necessarily causing a turnover, you force them to go backwards and you're taking time off the shot clock, which is helping out your defense. So I think that's kind of how you have to like shift your mindset versus like causing turnovers in the ride. Because I think when you've seen a lot of people go for checks or high body contact, those or pushing on the back, all those things have ended up in green cards or yellow cards. So it's just all about how you remain disciplined kind of in the ride. And our coaches done a really good job emphasizing that with us.
Now, what are your team's goals and expectations for this season? Obviously, it's to
Yeah.
return to the American Championship game and get over the
Mhm.
hump. But are there other
Yeah.
team goals that your team might have that fans aren't aware of?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the obvious one, especially for the last couple of years we've kind of gotten there, and then obviously we've lost to Florida. But I think just continuing to remain super competitive in the American. I think the American is a really, really competitive lacrosse conference right now, and we have a ton of good teams, and I think anyone can beat anybody on any given day. Obviously that, and we want to kind of just put our team in the best position to be successful in the conference tournament.
Now, individually, what do you want to see yourself accomplish for your
Yeah.
final, I guess, month and a half of lacrosse, which is crazy to say?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really crazy. It's really crazy. Yeah, for me, I think personally, it's just about playing my best lacrosse. And I feel like if I play my best lacrosse, then I'll be putting my teammates and my team in the best position to win. So I think that that's kind of what my mindset is going into it. Obviously, I'm gonna have as much fun as possible with my teammates out in the field. Obviously going to battle every time that we're out there. But I'm just kind of looking forward to continuing to like evolve my game and to see what teams kind of do and being able to adjust to what teams do for myself in play.
So let's transition now and talk about the beginning of your lacrosse career
Mhm.
and work all the way up to where you are today. So
Yeah.
you're from Durham, North Carolina. How'd you start playing lacrosse and what's it like growing up in North Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, so I started playing lacrosse naturally because my mom is the coach at Duke. So I just kind of was always very gravitated towards the game, and I started playing at a really young age. I think what's really cool about it is when I was young, lacrosse in North Carolina wasn't really huge yet, but because there was colleges like Duke and UNC. Now there's ECU. Campbell, tons of schools, Elon, High Point, all those schools that have lacrosse. And I think it wasn't necessarily a huge thing. And there was rec leagues. And I've started to see, I have a younger sister who's 13 now. So it's been cool to see her kind of in the way that she's growing up playing lacrosse and how different it was from when I was growing up playing lacrosse. We just kind of had rec and you would get out there on Saturday mornings and play. But I obviously always was very gravitated to the sport just because how much I was around it. So it's been really cool to see kind of how lacrosse in North Carolina has evolved and how the talent is getting better and better.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you. Like, obviously, when you
Yeah.
watch your younger sister's games, do you
Yeah.
notice like how much better the players have become since you when you were growing up playing in that sort of same, I guess, league?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my little sister is like worlds better than I was when I was 13. So it's been really cool to see kind of how youth programs and club programs in the area have started to develop and started to teach kids from a young age without it being like too much or too overwhelming for a young kid. But it's been really cool to see how young kids really get developed in North Carolina and people be into it and people like watching lacrosse and like at games like our games, Duke, UNC, like those high level programs are having fans at their games because they want to watch women's lacrosse. So I think it's really cool to be able to see like that development in like an area like North Carolina that wouldn't be considered necessarily like a hotbed.
Yeah, that's why I think it's so important to put lacrosse programs in those different areas. I know this
Yeah.
sort of skips ahead to the one of the final questions I have, but I just feel
Yeah.
like if you put lacrosse in, especially down south, and sort of
Mhm.
has the success that it's having, like it is in North Carolina, like say a team like Alabama got women's lacrosse and they started
Yeah.
having success like UNC, then that I think people don't really realize how the ripple effect that that program could
Yeah.
have on the whole community. And I feel like
Mhm.
you're seeing that in North Carolina with the success that Duke and UNC have had the last 10 years and how it's had a ripple effect on the community. It's cool to see how you're seeing it evolve with your younger sibling as well.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. It's also cool, like even in Greenville, where I am now, lacrosse wasn't, when I got here when I was a freshman, the program was what, 2 years old at that time. And now there's youth lacrosse programs here. Our team goes out in the community. I know I personally do a lot of individual lessons with kids, and it's been really cool to watch kind of the game explode in Greenville, which is when I got here 5 years ago, which was not the case. So it's been really, really unique experience and cool to see that kind of happen.
Yeah, we need to get South Carolina and Georgia a team because we just need to work it down all the way so
Yeah,
Florida so it can connect with Florida as well.
yeah, 100%.
Now, growing up, who was your favorite lacrosse player and team you like to watch?
Well, I'm gonna say the obvious. I'm gonna say Duke. Obviously, I can list off a whole list of Duke players, but a lot of the crease attackers, like Karen Maurer, Kristen Wagbo, who was my favorite when I was a kid, who she is now the coach at Virginia Tech. Um, Chrissy Kasner was one of my favorites. Taylor Trimble. All of those guys, a lot of crease attackers who I really looked up to from a young age. And then the obvious, in my opinion, like a Kayla Trainer, who I really, really really loved watching and have had the opportunity to watch her in person more than once. So those were definitely some of my favorites, but obviously I was ride or die Duke, no one
Yeah,
else for
yeah.
a long time.
And now it's the opposite. You want to beat them every time you play them.
Yes. Yes, badly.
Is it cool to sort of be in the position where you got to meet some of your favorite players on your favorite team? Because not many kids
Yeah.
get to say that.
Yeah, it's been cool. I think what's definitely unique is I've had the opportunity to have relationships with some of the players from even when I was a kid, and people that I've really looked up to in the lacrosse world. Not everyone gets to talk to them individually, so I think that's another reason why I've had the opportunity to learn so much is being able to have a relationship with those players on off the field and getting to watch them and hear them talk, especially players that are now college coaches. It's really cool to have a relationship with them and get to know them and watch them kind of in action.
Now, before college, you played for your high school at Cardinal Gibbons. So talk about your high school lacrosse experience and what you took away from it.
Yeah, I am extremely fortunate for my high school lacrosse experience. We were extremely successful. We were a really, really good team in the South, and we were really competitive. I think a big thing that stands out is we had the opportunity to compete against teams outside of North Carolina, which was really cool, and it was really a testament to how good we were, and getting to be able to compete against like the St. Anthony's and the St. Stephen St. Agnes's of the world, I think was really beneficial for me in my career. I also think like just being able to dominate in North Carolina was really, really special. And I had a really, really good group of teammates who some of us went on to play at the college level, some of us didn't, who we kind of grew up playing together and we all went to high school together. And it definitely created a unique bond between our teammates. I also think my coach, Patricia Alexander, she's still at Colonel Gibbons. She's fantastic. She has really, really helped me. And I don't think that I would be in the same position I was now if it wasn't for her and my experience at Gibbons.
What's your favorite memory from your high school lacrosse experience when you look
Yeah.
back on it now?
I think my favorite memory, I would say, would be winning our fourth state championship my senior year. I think having four in a row, it was hard not to like think about it and be like, well, we want four in a row. But just remembering how well we played in that game and how focused our team was and how excited yet a little bit sad I was when we won and it was over. But, just being able to really kind of dominate in the state of North Carolina was definitely the coolest experience, and being able to dominate in our state championship games all 4 years. But my senior year was definitely my favorite one.
Hey, at least you got to go off on a positive note. It wasn't
Yeah.
like the class after you that had their season canceled in the middle of it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Now, how do you think your high school lacrosse experience sort of helped prepare you for college with East Carolina?
Yeah, I think for me, personally, in high school, I think we were taught a lot of conceptual things that I think were very beneficial to going to the college level. Simple things like how to run an ISO play and what you do after that. I don't think everyone is taught that. And I think that having Coach Trish and having her really teach us big conceptual picture things and like little things like the importance of ground balls, the importance of stick work, the importance of being in shape, and being able to play a whole 60 minutes. And those are things that I was taught while I was in high school that I don't think everyone is taught those things, especially in the state of North Carolina. So I think I'm very, very thankful for her and the way that she coached me throughout my 4 years and even younger. She coached me when I was a little bit younger too, because I think it translated very well into the college game.
Now, I wasn't able to find this information, but where did you play club lacrosse and what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so I played for Carolina Fever is what it was called, but now it is called Ultimate Carolina. And I was coached by a big group of coaches, but mainly Patricia Alexander, who is with Colonel Gibbons, and Katie O'Mara, who started the club, who started Carolina Fever. It's now Ultimate Carolina. So those are the main people that I was coached by. And I just am so grateful for my club experience. I had a really good group of teammates where majority of us all went to play at the next level. And we kind of all grew up playing from like, I would say sixth grade is when the big group of us, and then it just, our group never really changed. And I think like a big thing that we kind of got challenged on is when we were younger, in our freshman-ish time, freshmen, sophomores, we played high level competitive teams when we were at these tournaments. So we would go get beat by the Yellow Jackets and Heroes and the M&D Blacks and all of those type of teams, and we would get beat like badly. And then when we played them when we were seniors, it was a completely different story. And I think that being challenged that way by teams and that were better than us, I think pushed us. And then when we got to play them our senior year, like as we were more developed and better players, it was really cool to see us kind of be able to compete, being from like North Carolina and not from like a Maryland, a Long Island, those types of places. So I think that playing better competition really helped me and helped our club team. And I had a really great experience in club.
Now, I do want to ask you one question about your mom, even though this is
Yeah,
your
of course.
interview.
No, of course.
So obviously your mom, Kirsten, is a well-respected person in the lacrosse community for what she's done for Duke lacrosse over the past
Yeah.
few years. And you guys get to face off against each other one more time next week.
Yeah.
So I did want to ask you, I feel like everyone always asks you about like what it was like, what's it like playing against your mom and sort
Mhm.
of the lacrosse aspect, but I want to sort of
Yeah.
ask you what she sort of meant to you for your lacrosse career. And obviously, we see her in TV as a coach all the time, but what is she like
Yeah.
as Caroline's mom off the field?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, first off, I mean, it's been just the coolest thing. I think to be kind of in the same world as my mom. Obviously, she's one of the greats. She's fantastic at what she does, and no one will ever, ever, ever not take that away from her because that's not it. But like she will be remembered forever as one of the greats of the sport. And I think that for me, it's been really cool to growing up and watching her kind of do what she does, do what she does and have so much success at such a high level. I think she has really helped me in weird way, not in ways that you would think. Like she doesn't coach me like I'm one of her players. And I think that's something that is really awesome. Like I don't want to be one of her players. If I never considered going to Duke, that never crossed my mind. I don't want to be one of her players, but I think if I asked her about what she thought, she would tell me. I also think that like it's fun to have really high level, intelligent conversations with my mom about lacrosse and like pick her brain about certain things. And I think that has really helped me. I mean, our relationship hasn't changed at all, I think, from me playing. But it's been really cool to have such a unique experience with my mom. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to be a coach after you're done playing?
I do. Yeah, I do. So I wasn't sure for a while if that's what I wanted to do, but obviously growing up around it, watching her, I really have found enjoyment. I've done really small things working with the club level and individual worked obviously a lot of her camps, a ton of other camps. And I've definitely really found a passion for it. And it's definitely something I'll be looking to do
That's
soon.
awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just think like that's cool that your mom like isn't like a coach all the time. I feel like a lot of times people
Yeah.
would sort of think that like, oh, she's probably coaching you all the time, but it's like
No.
I feel like she probably wants a break from it every once in a while. So it's sort of nice how it's like organic how it happens.
Yeah, 100%. I think that she would never ever cross the line, like if coaching me, especially now that I'm a college player. She didn't even do it to me in high school. I think if when you're like a young middle schooler, you don't want to hear what your mom has to say. But obviously, as I've gotten older, I 100% respect her opinion and like having conversations like that with her. But that's not what our everyday conversations are like. She's still very much my mom. It's just kind of unique in the fact that I am very involved in the world that she's also involved with. And she's someone that I've looked up to for a really long time. So that's where it's kind of different.
So let's talk about your recruiting process now with East
Yeah.
Carolina. What was that like for yourself and what made you want to go there versus other schools you might have looked at?
Yeah. So when I was being recruited to ECU, it was what, 2018, 2017, maybe? 2017, I think. And there wasn't a team yet. So that I think was very different, coming into a new program, like completely new. And I think that immediately when I got to campus, it was the first place that I visited, and I knew right away that I wanted to go. I really did. And I tried to tell my mom I wanted to commit when I was a sophomore, because you could have committed before that recruiting rule, before, but I tried to tell my mom, and she was like, "You're not ready." And she was like, "You have not seen enough places yet, so we're gonna go wait." So I waited quite a long time, honestly, to commit, but I always knew I was really drawn to the campus, and the fan base at East Carolina. I think that this place eats, breathes, sleeps ECU athletics, and it's been something that's really cool to be a part of, and how they've embraced lacrosse, coming in as a new sport and a new program has been really awesome. And it's something that really drew me in when I was a kid and I was being recruited, and I knew it right away.
Yeah. Obviously, cool logo too, which helps a little bit.
Yeah, very much so. Very cool.
Now, what was like the biggest adjustment you had to make to college lacrosse as a freshman?
I think for me, the biggest thing was just the speed of the game. I got recruited as a crease attacker, and then my freshman year, I played midfield. I played in the midfield, because that's what they needed, and I was going to do it, obviously, whatever my coaches wanted me to do. So I think that was the biggest adjustment for me, was just the overall speed, and how fast the game is played, and how fast you have to be, and how good of shape that you have to be in, to be able to compete at a really high level. So I think that was definitely the biggest adjustment, without a doubt.
Now, during your freshman year, the season was obviously canceled due to the pandemic. How'd you handle the challenge of having your season get cut short so early on in your career? And how'd you sort of handle the challenge of the uncertainty of not knowing when you're going to play again? Because I feel like that was probably the most difficult part about that whole situation, I guess, the best
Yeah.
way I can articulate it.
Yeah. There was a lot of challenges. I think we were just actually talking about the other day, because we were on spring break, and our season, when it kind of got canceled, we were on spring break, and we were practicing. I think there's a couple ways you can look at it. I think obviously I choose to look at it as like kind of a blessing at this point, because it gave me an opportunity to come back and get my master's and further my education and take my fifth year. But I think in the moment, I was absolutely just devastated, just because you just didn't know what was going to happen next. You didn't know if you're going to play that next year or what that was kind of look like. And I'm very thankful that they granted us our eligibility back for sure. But I think that, in hindsight, there was a lot of good things that came from that. And coming back for my fifth year was definitely the one of them.
Yeah, you gotta look at it from a positive way, even though most of it was pretty negative. I won't lie.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Now, in your sophomore year, your team only had 4 wins, and then in the next 2 seasons, your team went from 9 to 10 wins in your senior year. What
Mhm.
would you say has been the biggest reason for your team's improvement over the years, and what has your role been in that? Because I think a lot of people are obviously going to look at what Mandy did the last 3 years, sort of bringing in players like yourself to help the program get better.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a lot more to that that people sort of don't look at. So I'm just curious what your perspective is on the improvement the program has made over the past 3 years.
Yeah, 100%. I think first things first, like when I was a freshman, that was the first year that we had a full grades. So the first year that there was freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors on the team. Before that, it was a whole bunch of freshmen and sophomores and one junior, or like a whole group of freshmen. So I think that we were kind of like, I think the last new program that happened before COVID, to where the transfer portal wasn't really a thing and there was no COVID years. So I think that because of that, I think it takes growth to build a program. And I think that at kind of you saw that growth in the progression of our seasons. I think we had a big culture change when I was a junior that I was a captain and I was a part of, that I think that really kind of pushed us to where kind of we are today and the success that we've seen. I think that started with the players and the girls on the team. And I think we knew that we wanted to change, and we knew that we were very capable and with the talent that we had of competing and playing at a really high level. And we've shown that, and we're continuing to show that. So I think that, I think naturally the building of programs, like there's going to be some type of roadblock or some type of like bumps in the road, and I think that happens with everybody's season every year. But I think you kind of saw like the real growth of our program as we've started to bring in more recruits, and we've had older girls on the team for longer and people that have been on the field for longer. So that's kind of what I think about it, and it's been a really cool, special thing to be a part of, and it's a huge reason why I decided to stay for my fifth year.
Yeah, I think culture is a huge part of any program. Well, I read a good quote that's like, culture is decided by the worst thing that you would accept. And I thought that
Yeah.
was an interesting quote. It sort of
Yeah.
made me think. And you
Yeah.
realize every good program has a good culture of people that work hard and hold each other accountable. And I feel like
Mhm.
teams that aren't successful, like you have the most talented players in the world, but if there's a toxic culture going around, I feel like it seeps into sort of the
Yeah.
game and all that other stuff.
Yeah, 100%. All that starts with the players. I think you can talk about coaches and all of that, but if the players on the team decide what they want their culture to be, and I think we did that. And when I was a junior, we really took it upon ourselves as captains, a captain group that we had that year, and as upperclassmen, really just to kind of take off and figure out like how we're going to change and what we're going to do to help ourselves compete at a high level. And we've continued to do that.
Now, the last 2 seasons, your team has made it to the AAC championship and lost to Florida. First of all, what's it like playing in the American Conference? And
Yeah.
what do you think your team has to do to get over the hump and win a championship, presumably against Florida, if all things line up the way they usually do?
Yeah, I think a big thing for us, obviously getting to that point, we've been really successful in the last couple of years in AACs. First off, the AAC is extremely competitive. Florida, James Madison, Temple, Vanderbilt, Old Dominion, Cincinnati, any of those games, anyone can beat anyone. And that's how you know it's competitive. And I think those big time games like Florida are huge for us in our program. And, I think we showed more than once last year that we can beat those teams. And I think that that's the same mindset that we have this year. Obviously, we're not thinking too far ahead of that at this moment. But I think that being competitive in the AAC is obviously where we want to be. We had great games with Florida twice last year, and just trying to figure out, if we are in that position again this year, how we can win that game, because we are fully capable.
So let's go on to a segment I like to call the non-lacrosse segment, where I ask you some non-lacrosse questions to hopefully get to know you a little bit more off the
Yeah.
field. So first
Yeah.
one is, if there was a movie made about your life, who would you want to play yourself?
Um, I think Jennifer Aniston.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Now, you obviously have the best style on the team, but besides yourself, who has the best off the field style on the East Carolina women's lacrosse team?
I'm gonna say Kayla Wilkes or Maddie Kircher.
Now, what is the most interesting thing you've read or seen this week?
Ooh. Ooh, I don't know. That's hard. Maybe that TikTok is getting banned.
Yeah, I don't
One of
understand
them.
why. I feel like there's other important stuff that need to get finished before that, but that's just my
Yeah,
opinion.
I saw that and I didn't look too much into it, but I was like, huh, that's interesting. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Well, I guess outside of March Madness, which starts today at the time of this
Yeah.
recording,
Yeah.
I have UConn winning. That's my bracket for anyone that knows,
Ooh.
and that could completely get in my face next week if
Yeah.
this gets released and they get upset. But
Yeah.
um, I just I saw the story about this coach for the Tampa Bay Lightning and how he wasn't considering coaching hockey at all, and then
Yeah.
he was playing to be a lawyer, and then I guess one
Mhm.
of his kids' dad asked him to like coach their youth team, and I guess he
Yeah.
really liked it a lot, and it led him to become obviously the coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's been the
Right.
longest tenured NHL coach, and he never really played hockey, and I just thought that was pretty interesting to see that because I feel like with most coaches they play the sport they coach. So I thought that was
Yeah.
really cool. And I really
Yeah.
like him a lot and his sort of mentality on the game. So that was probably the
Yeah.
most interesting thing that I saw this week.
Nice. Nice. That's a cool one. I like that.
Now, what is the best place you've ever traveled to?
Ooh. I went to Costa Rica when I was, I want to say eighth or fifth grade with our family friends, and it was a fantastic trip. I also have been to Prague, actually for the World Cup when I was younger, but I was with my mom. I was a little young. I was around 9. So I
Hmm.
remember most of it, but obviously both of those places have been really cool.
That's awesome. I heard a lot of good things about Prague.
Yeah.
Probably like New York City. I haven't really traveled that much, to be honest with you. So I gotta do that a little bit more.
Yeah, for
Last
sure.
non-lacrosse question is if you could play any other sport at East Carolina, what would you play?
Ooh. I think probably volleyball.
Hmm.
Volleyball is what I would
Nice.
play, volleyball or basketball. I don't think I'm tall enough for either sport, but I did play both of them in high school, but I think I would pick volleyball.
Could you be like the setup person? I don't know anything
Yeah,
about
that's
volleyball.
who I was, the
Yeah,
setter in
all
high
right.
school.
I feel like it doesn't height doesn't really matter for that position.
Yeah.
I could be completely wrong about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably if East Carolina has a golf team, I would do that. That would be fun.
Yeah, they do. They do. You could
All right.
definitely play.
Yeah. Now let's get back to some lacrosse questions now. First one is what advice do you have for younger players listening to this on what it takes to be a college player like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the advice that I have for younger players would just be to watch the game. I think you can learn a lot from just watching. I think a lot of things that I've learned from a young age would be just watching high level lacrosse. And I think a lot of that is translated into my game. I think another piece of advice that I would have is don't specialize in lacrosse. I think you should play basketball, soccer, hockey, golf, tennis. It doesn't matter. Volleyball, all of they may not translate, but I think when you specialize in just lacrosse, it's important that you play every sport under the sun. And I think I did for a really long time until I narrowed it down to about 3. So I think just really watching a game at the high level will help players learn, but also don't just play lacrosse, play other sports too.
Yeah, I feel like everyone now specializes in one sport, and then everyone wonders why everyone gets burnt out so easily. It's because you're playing
Exactly.
one sport like
Exactly.
every all year. So of course that's
Yeah.
probably going to happen. So I agree with that advice 100%.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, Caroline, before we end this pod, do you have any shout outs you want to give to any of your family members, teammates, friends, coaches?
Yeah.
Feel free to give them a shout out. And who should we have on the podcast next?
Ooh, that's hard. Yeah, I'll shout out to all my teammates and my parents. I'm sure they're all gonna listen. So all of them. I don't who would you want to have on the podcast next? Like if you could pick someone to have on the podcast, who would you pick?
Ooh, that's a good. I haven't really thought about that.
I know. Now I'm gonna ask you.
Oh, I feel like Charlotte North, obviously.
Yeah,
She's like the
yeah, that would
best
be a good
lacrosse
one.
player. And then coach probably Jenny Levy from North Carolina because I really want to
Yeah.
pick her brain about just the game. So probably those
Yeah,
two for me.
Jenny's awesome. Jenny is a really good family friend of ours. She's awesome. So I'll shout out her too.
All right, all right. Well, Caroline, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate your time. I think you're a great player, even better person as well. And obviously, I wish you nothing but the best for the rest of the season. And yeah, best of luck for this season as well. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch your team play and see how things unfold in the American, because, like you said, there's a lot of good teams this year that are going to be vying for that trophy.
Yeah, 100% awesome. Thank you so much for having me.